How are you? It's a genuine question. I ask because I care, and also because I think that when we're living through a relentlessly traumatic period like this, we maybe stop asking ourselves how we are. How we want to be is on hold. Happiness, like so much these days, is deferred, postponed, put off until things are back to some kind of normal. There may be a world in which we are happy, but it's not right here, right now. With or without the presence of a global pandemic, that is how many people approach happiness. Happiness to them is something conditional. It becomes part of an if-then statement. If this happens, then I will be happy. If I get to this point, have all these things, achieve these particular successes, then I will be happy. Matt Haig, in his latest novel, The Midnight Library, tells the story of Nora Seed, whose life has been full of misery and regret. She feels that she's let everyone down, including herself. But then she is given the opportunity to live as if she had done things differently, made different decisions, taken other paths. And as she seeks to undo every one of her regrets, she tries to work out her perfect life. She tries to find happiness. It is easy, she says, to mourn the lives we aren't living. But it's not lives we regret not living that are the real problem. It is the regret itself. It's the regret that makes us shrivel and wither and feel like our own and other people's worst enemy. We can't, she says, tell if any of those other versions would have been better or worse. Those lives are happening, it's true, but you are happening as well. And that is the happening we have to focus on. Other things may happen that may give us a sense of joy, or they may not. But as Nora Seed said, you are happening as well. And that is the happening we have to focus on. Matt Haig, the book's author, is someone who lives with anxiety and depression, and I think is someone who really understands the human condition. In his groundbreaking book, Reasons to Stay Alive, he offers some pieces of advice. And these are some of them. Appreciate happiness when it is there. Sip, don't gulp. Be gentle with yourself. Work less. Sleep more. Listen more than you talk. Wherever you are, at any moment, try and find something beautiful. Don't worry about things that probably won't happen. Live, love, let go, and so on. So much of his advice is about now, being present in the present. As Nora said, you are happening as well. And that is the happening we have to focus on. So here's the thing. When Jesus gathered people together to share with them his wisdom, and he said, "Blessed are you who are poor in spirit, or who mourn, or who are meek, or who hunger and thirst for righteousness," he wasn't saying you will be blessed, as if your blessedness, your happiness, was a future reward for having to deal with all this stuff now. No, he was saying you are blessed now. You are happy now. Happiness is not something to defer or postpone or put off until things are back to some kind of normal. No, if happiness is to be found, then it's to be found in the present. It's to be found in the here and now. So Jesus said, they are blessed now, those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, when Jesus spoke about poverty, he rarely just meant material poverty. He always had in mind those who had somehow lost their sense of who they were. And time again, he alluded to these people who, despite being recipients or heirs of something amazing, lived like those who had nothing. Like the guest at the wedding feast who wasn't wearing the garments of celebration. Or the servant who buried his talent in the ground because he was afraid of his master. Or the older brother who refused to join in the celebrations following the return of the prodigal son. People who, like the whiskey priest in Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory, had this lingering sense of having missed happiness by seconds at an appointed place. That sort of poverty, that terrifying existential poverty, is what holds many people captive today. They don't know. They just don't know that they are the sons and daughters of a loving, generous, grace-filled God. But like the prodigal son coming home, those who are lost, those who are in exile, those who've been plunged into that awful existential poverty of just not knowing who they are, they can suddenly, wonderfully be reminded that God has chosen them, that he loves them, and that he's on their side. That despite everything, they are the recipients or heirs of something amazing. They are blessed now, those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And they are blessed now, those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Because God has entered their pain and sorrow now. Jesus not only suffered for us, but he suffers with us. And in our suffering we can be drawn nearer to God. As C.S. Lewis said, we can ignore even pleasure, but pain insists on being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. And when Jesus spoke about those who mourn, he wasn't just talking about the bereaved. For there are many who grieve for things that they have lost and for things that they have given up. Now there is a kind of grief that can rob us of happiness in the present, because we compare the present either with an embellished recollection of a golden past or with a rose-tinted view of a yet more glorious future. And then we curse the present for being somehow inferior to either of these. But we mustn't let what is not detract from what is. There is goodness and beauty and love and truth and joy now, if we but open our eyes to perceive it. And maybe the blessedness, the happiness, is found in relinquishment, in trusting in God and in finding our future life in him. Those to whom Jesus spoke had left their homes, their jobs, everything, in order to follow him. But as the brave missionary Jim Elliot famously wrote, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. There is blessedness, happiness, in our giving of ourselves to God. There is joy, hilarity, as Paul says, in our generosity. They are blessed now, those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And they are blessed now, those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth. For those who follow Jesus, loving God and loving our neighbour is what it is all about. And the more we rely on competition rather than cooperation, the more we put our needs before the needs of others, the more we talk about our rights rather than work for true justice for the oppressed, then the more we are violating these ancient commandments for God's people, and the further we are removed from the only true source of blessedness in this life. It is the same for those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for those who are merciful, for those who are pure in heart, for those who are peacemakers. This is all about living for God and living for others. It's about loving God and loving others. And there is a blessedness in this. Matt Haig's Midnight Library has so many resonances with the classic film It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is about small-town Bedford Falls resident George Bailey, whose life is always one step short of his dreams. But George is able to see what the world would have been like had he never lived, and all the good that he had done, and all the kindness that he had shown, and all the love that he had given had not been done and shown and given. The inspiration for the film came from a short story by Philip Van Doren Stern called The Greatest Gift. In the story were the words, "Everyone's life is important because it touches so many other lives." It is the way that our lives touch other lives that makes a difference. George Bailey discovered that his was really a wonderful life. And though he stood on the bridge from which he had previously thought to fling himself off, though nothing about his desperate situation had changed, he wanted to live, and his despair had turned to happiness. There is happiness to be found in our generosity and in our readiness to give things up, and in our meekness and humility, and in our passion for justice, and in our graciousness and mercy, and in our purity of heart, and in our willingness to make for peace. Doing these things, or being these things, is not a down payment for a happiness that will be reserved for us in the future. Doing and being these things is a wellspring of happiness in the present. You really do have a wonderful life, a truly blessed life. I know things are tough. I know things are looking bleak. And Matt Haig's character Nora Seed is right when she says that there is no way of living that can immunize you against sadness. As she says, sadness is intrinsically part of the fabric of happiness. You can't have one without the other. Of course, they come in different degrees and quantities. But there is no life where you can be in a state of sheer happiness forever. And imagining there is just breeds more unhappiness in the life you're in. That means as well, though, that there is also no life where you must be in a state of sheer sadness forever. And imagining there is means that we just stop looking for and noticing the sources of happiness that are there in our own lives. Now, I'm not saying that you must be happy. That would be a terrible thing to say to anyone. But at the same time, we cheat ourselves out of a sense of happiness if we just defer it or postpone it or put it off until things are back to some kind of normal. Happiness is not something conditional. We don't need to get to that point or have all those things or achieve some particular successes in order to be happy. When Jesus said, "Blessed are you who are poor in spirit, or who mourn, or who are meek, or who hunger and thirst for righteousness," he wasn't saying you will be blessed. No, he was saying you are blessed now. You are happy now. Happiness is not something to defer or postpone or put off until things are back to some kind of normal. No, in fact, the only place that happiness can be found is in the present. The only time is now. "Blessed are you," said Jesus. You are blessed now. You are happy now. There is something, somewhere, right now that can be the cause of some rejoicing in our lives. Happiness is not something to hunt for as if we were trying to capture a timid creature. Our happiness, our blessedness is a present reality. That is what Jesus was saying. The Jesuit, Jean-Pierre de Caussade, taught that each moment has a sacramental significance as Christ comes to us each day in every moment. He said God speaks to every individual through what happens to them moment by moment. There is no moment when God is not manifest. No moment is trivial, since each one contains a divine kingdom and heavenly sustenance. The present moment, he said, holds riches beyond your wildest dreams. Blessed are you, said Jesus, right now, in this present moment that holds riches beyond your wildest dreams. How blessed are you?